Evan Carter had always believed that his life was ordinary. He lived in a quiet town, went to high school, and spent most of his free time playing video games or reading stories about brave heroes. Nothing about him suggested that he would ever be part of anything extraordinary. That was until the night the sky opened. It started as a regular evening. The sun had set and stars were twinkling above. Evan sat in his backyard, leaning back on the grass, staring at the constellations. His dog, Max, slept beside him, snoring softly. A cool breeze rustled the leaves and the quiet hum of crickets filled the air. He loved these moments of peace, but peace, as it turned out, was about to vanish. Without warning, a strange light appeared in the sky. It wasn't like a plane or a shooting star. It was bright and swirling, like a ribbon of energy twisting and turning above him. Evan rubbed his eyes, thinking he might be imagining things. The light grew larger and closer, spinning faster until a sudden force pulled at him, lifting him off the ground. He shouted, but his voice was lost in the roar of wind and energy. Then everything went black. When Evan opened his eyes again, he was no longer in his backyard. The air smelled different, fresh, metallic, and faintly sweet. He lay on a soft surface that seemed to float above a glowing blue river. Around him, islands drifted in the sky, some small and rocky, others lush with forests and sparkling waterfalls. He could see creatures flying, some resembling birds, others entirely alien in shape and color. The sky was painted with shades of violet and gold, and the stars seemed closer than ever before. Before he could take it all in, a voice called out. "Who is this human?" it demanded. Evan turned to see a tall figure with luminous skin and silver hair. Her eyes were large and golden, filled with curiosity and caution. She wore flowing robes adorned with intricate patterns that shimmered as she moved. Evan froze. I'm Evan," he stammered. "I don't know how I got here." "You must meet Princess Lyra." At the center of the palace, in a grand hall filled with soft light, stood Princess Lyra. She was regal and graceful, with hair that shimmered like liquid silver and eyes that reflected the color of the skies. Around her were guards in elegant armor, their weapons glowing faintly with energy. Even from a distance, Evan felt her presence, strong, commanding, yet kind. Before he could speak, a warning alarm echoed through the palace. Red lights flashed and the ground trembled. Shadowy creatures with glowing red eyes were moving toward the palace gates. They were enormous clawed beasts with jagged teeth, and they moved as one, silent and deadly. The guards rushed to their positions, and Lyra's calm expression tightened into concern. "They are coming," she said, her voice steady but urgent. "If they breach the palace, all is lost." She turned to Evan. "We need a protector at the sword pedestal." Its blade was silver, etched with symbols that seemed to move, and it glowed faintly even in the palace light. It called to him in a way he couldn't explain, a gentle hum vibrating through his bones. "Draw it," Lyra commanded. "It will choose the one worthy. You must protect me." He had never held a real sword in his life, and now he was being asked to fight for the life of an alien princess against monsters that could rip a grown warrior apart. But when he looked into her eyes, he saw trust. He saw hope. He knew he could not say no. His hand trembled as he grasped the sword. The moment his fingers closed around the hilt, a surge of energy shot through him. The blade exploded in brilliant blue light, illuminating the entire hall. The shadow creatures outside let out a piercing screech and faltered as if afraid of something. Evan felt strength he had never known. His body moved instinctively, stepping forward, raising the sword. The light from the blade expanded, forming a protective barrier around Lyra and the guards. The shadow beasts slammed into it but could not pass. Their claws and teeth met nothing but shimmering energy, and with a final shriek they retreated into the darkness beyond the palace. The hall fell silent. Evan stood there, holding the sword, breathing heavily. He felt power coursing through him, but also fear. He had no idea what had just happened. Princess Lyra approached, her expression a mixture of awe and relief. You are the chosen one," she said softly. "The legends spoke of a warrior from another world, one who would wield the Luminar blade and protect Eloria in its darkest hour. I see now that the prophecy has come true." "I can't be a chosen anything." He could sense it was more than just a weapon. It was a key, a guide, a force that connected him to this world. Commander Kale, the grizzled warrior who had trained the palace guards for decades, stepped forward. His armored hand rested on the hilt of his own weapon. "I've fought many battles, seen many warriors, but never have I witnessed such a bond with the blade. You must train, boy, if you are to survive." "We will teach you," she said. "But you must trust yourself and you must trust the sword. It will guide you as it guided our ancestors. Together, we can defend this kingdom." For the first time in his life, he felt a sense of purpose stronger than any game or story he had ever known. He was no longer just Evan Carter. He was the protector, the one chosen to wield the Luminar blade, and perhaps the only hope for Eloria's survival. Outside, the night sky glowed with a strange light, and Evan sensed that this was only the beginning. The shadow beasts would return, stronger and more relentless. But now he had something they did not: a sword that responded to his heart, a princess who believed in him, and the courage to face the impossible. As he stood there, gripping the glowing blade, Evan realized something he had never imagined. Maybe, just maybe, ordinary humans were capable of extraordinary things. And tonight, in a world far beyond Earth, he would take his first steps toward becoming a hero. The palace doors closed behind the retreating shadows, and the stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if welcoming him to a destiny that had waited for centuries. Evan Carter, the boy from Earth, had drawn a random sword to protect an alien princess, and in that moment everything changed. Evan Carter had barely caught his breath after the first battle when he realized that survival in Eloria would not be as simple as holding a glowing sword. The Luminar blade pulsed softly in his hand, as if reminding him that it was not just a weapon but a responsibility. Princess Lyra had insisted that he remain in the palace to train, and he now understood why. Every corner of this alien world seemed alive, and threats lurked even in places that appeared peaceful. Commander Kale, the grizzled veteran who had led the palace guards for decades, wasted no time. He strode into the training hall, his heavy boots echoing across the crystalline floor. The hall was vast, with walls that reflected light like mirrors and platforms suspended in midair that could rise or fall at the commander's command. Weapons of every shape and size lined the walls, and energy runes glimmered faintly, reacting to motion and thought. "You survived your first encounter," Kale said, his voice rough but not unkind. "That is commendable. But surviving once does not make you a warrior. The shadow beasts will not hesitate a second time. You must be prepared to meet them and more, and you must learn to wield that sword with control. The sword reacts to courage and intent. You must understand it, not just swing it. Come, we will begin training." Fear made it heavy and sluggish. Determination made it light and responsive. Even anger could make it burn hot, but uncontrolled rage caused it to flicker and lose focus. "You must learn balance," Kale explained. "The sword reflects you. If you waver, it wavers. If you stand firm, it stands with you. Do you understand?" He had never thought of a weapon as a living thing, capable of reflecting a person's inner state. He spent hours swinging the blade, slowly learning to calm his thoughts, to breathe, and to focus. With each passing day, the sword seemed to hum more steadily, and Evan could sense faint images and pathways forming in the air around him. Princess Lyra visited often during training. She watched quietly from the edge of the hall, her eyes studying every movement. Unlike Commander Kale, she did not speak harshly, but her presence reminded Evan of the stakes. Every time he glanced at her, he felt a mix of fear and determination. He was not just training for himself, he was training to protect her, and that realization sharpened his focus. Days turned into weeks. Evan began to notice small, extraordinary things. The sword could project faint energy shields, forming barriers that could block attacks. It responded to strategy as much as to courage. If Evan predicted an enemy's move and acted with intent, the sword glowed brighter and stronger. It was learning from him just as he was learning from it. One afternoon, while practicing in the training hall, the sword pulsed more brightly than ever before. A section of the wall shimmered and revealed a hidden map, etched in glowing lines. Evan stepped closer, and the sword extended a faint beam of light along the paths, highlighting locations across Eloria. "These are ancient sites," Lyra said as she appeared beside him. "Our ancestors hid knowledge and weapons here, meant only for the chosen one. The sword is guiding you. The Luminar blade is more than a sword. It is a key to our history and the protection of our world." Each site was unique. One floated high in the sky, accessible only by jumping across floating rocks. Another lay in a cavern filled with energy currents that could knock a person off balance. The training tested his physical ability, his mind, and his courage. Commander Kale was relentless. "Courage alone is not enough," he said one evening. "You must think, plan, and adapt. Humans are clever, Evan. Use that. Adaptation and intelligence make your species dangerous. You will need both here." Every time he succeeded, the sword pulsed warmly, almost as if praising him. One night the palace was quiet and Evan could hear only the soft hum of the sword. Lyra approached him again, her expression serious. "I must tell you something important," she said. "The shadow beasts are not acting alone. There is a being, ancient and cruel, guiding them. Vorath, the Dark General, once served as a protector of our world, but he was consumed by ambition and hatred. He wishes to drain the life from Eloria and rule over the remnants. The shadow beasts are his army. That is why your training is critical. You must grow strong, not just in skill, but in understanding. The sword will help, but it cannot fight alone. You must think, act, and lead." He remembered Commander Kale's words and realized that humans were unique because of their creativity, adaptability, and empathy. Perhaps these qualities could give him an edge in ways brute strength could not. As the nights passed, Evan trained harder. He ran through the floating gardens, leapt across suspended platforms, and practiced defensive stances with the sword. He experimented with its energy, learning how to shape it into barriers, how to push enemies back without striking them directly, and how to sense disturbances in the environment. The more he practiced, the more he felt connected to Eloria itself, as if the planet recognized his courage and intent. During a particularly intense session, Evan noticed something unexpected. When he focused on protecting Lyra in his imagination, the sword glowed brighter, and energy seemed to flow toward him from the walls and floor. It was responding not just to his courage, but to his sense of responsibility and care. This discovery excited him. He realized that his humanity, his compassion and loyalty made him stronger in ways he had never considered. One morning, Commander Kale announced that it was time for Evan's first solo test. "You will enter the training grounds alone," Kale said, pointing to a vast arena filled with holographic enemies. "The sword will guide you. You must defeat the shadows and protect the projection of the princess. Remember, intelligence, courage, and creativity matter more than brute force." The sword pulsed with approval every time he made a correct decision, and the shadows faltered when he acted with strategy rather than panic. The test was grueling, and Evan was pushed to his limits. He realized that this was more than training, it was a reflection of his potential. The sword, the princess, and the challenges of Eloria were all teaching him that being a hero meant more than courage. It meant responsibility, quick thinking, and the willingness to face fear. When the final shadow fell, Evan dropped to his knees, exhausted but triumphant. The sword's glow softened, and a sense of calm filled him. Commander Kale nodded. "You have done well. But this is only the beginning. The true battle lies ahead, beyond these walls. You are learning quickly, and I can see that humanity's strength is more than physical. It is the courage, wisdom, and heart you carry. That is what makes you our hope." He was training to protect an alien princess, to defend a kingdom, and to face a darkness that threatened an entire world. He understood that fear would come, that he would stumble, but he also understood that he had something unique, something worth fighting for. As the sun set over Eloria, casting golden and violet light across the floating islands, Evan stood on a balcony, holding the glowing sword. He looked at the horizon and felt the first true spark of confidence. He had a long way to go, but he was learning. He was growing stronger, and when the time came, he would be ready to face whatever darkness Vorath sent to challenge him. For the first time since arriving in this world, Evan felt something he had never felt on Earth: purpose. The luminar blade pulsed gently in his hand, a reminder that he was no longer ordinary. He was a protector, a student, and perhaps the chosen one that legends had awaited for centuries. And as he watched the stars of Eloria twinkle above, he knew that the journey had only just begun. Evan had trained for weeks, yet nothing could have truly prepared him for the battle that awaited. The shadow beasts had grown stronger, and their leader, Vorath, was no longer a vague threat in legend. He had become real, a darkness creeping closer every day. The palace, once a place of safety, now felt like a fragile bubble in a world teetering on the edge of chaos. The morning began quietly. Evan stood on the balcony, the luminar blade glowing softly in his hand. Its light pulsed with his heartbeat, a steady rhythm that reminded him he was alive, that he was ready. Princess Lyra joined him, her expression calm but serious. "The scouts report that the shadow beasts are approaching again," she said. "They are larger in number this time. Vorath himself may be leading them. You must be ready, Evan. Remember, the sword responds to your intent, not your strength. Focus, and it will guide you. You are not alone in this." These creatures had terrorized many lands, and even the bravest warriors hesitated in their presence. Evan raised the luminar blade, feeling it hum with power. The first shadow beast lunged, faster than his eyes could follow. Instinctively, he swung the sword, and a shield of radiant energy erupted in front of him, repelling the creature. The others paused, confused by the unexpected force. The battlefield had become a dance of light and shadow. Evan discovered that the sword not only protected him, but also allowed him to influence the battlefield. By focusing on certain movements, he could redirect the beast's attacks, guide them away from the guards, and even create barriers to protect vulnerable areas. Each time he succeeded, the sword glowed brighter, as if approving his choices. Commander Kale barked orders, directing the soldiers to flank the beasts, while Lyra coordinated the palace defenses. Evan realized that this was not just a test of combat skill. It was a test of strategy, quick thinking, and leadership. The shadow beasts were relentless, but humans had something the creatures lacked: creativity. Evan spotted a cluster of beasts preparing to strike a section of the wall where the palace's energy shields were weakest. He leapt forward, guiding the sword in a wide arc. A wave of blue energy shot from the blade, pushing the creatures back and buying the soldiers time to reinforce the shields. The sword's light stretched farther than he had thought possible, and for a moment, Evan felt as if he was connected to the very energy of Eloria itself. As the battle continued, Voreth appeared, towering and imposing, cloaked in shadow that seemed to move independently of his body. His eyes locked onto Evan, and the boy felt a chill run down his spine. This was the being the legends had warned about, the dark general who had once been a protector but now sought destruction. Voreth's presence changed everything. The shadow beasts grew faster, more coordinated, as if they drew strength from their leader. Evan felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He could not falter. Not now. Not when Lyra and the palace depended on him. Evan took a deep breath, focusing on the Luminar blade. He had learned in training that fear weakened him, while courage and intent strengthened the sword. He imagined protecting the palace, guiding the soldiers, and keeping Lyra safe. The sword responded, glowing with a brilliant intensity, and for the first time, Evan felt truly powerful. He moved with precision, using the sword to redirect attacks and create energy barriers. Each movement was calculated, not random, and the sword amplified his actions. The soldiers, inspired by his leadership, fought with renewed vigor. Even Lyra, standing behind the defenses, seemed more confident as she coordinated her guards with a steady hand. Voreth stepped forward, the shadows around him writhing like living smoke. He struck with immense speed, aiming directly at Evan. The boy raised the Luminar blade, and the sword's light met the darkness. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The clash of light and shadow sent waves of energy across the battlefield. Evan could feel the sword reacting to Voreth's power, trying to guide him toward the right actions. He remembered his training: strategy over strength, focus over panic. He sidestepped, letting the sword's energy form a protective arc that deflected Voreth's attack. The dark general snarled, frustrated that a human boy could withstand him. Evan countered with a push of radiant energy, sending Voreth staggering backward. The shadow beasts faltered, sensing their leader's hesitation. Evan seized the moment. He channeled his intent through the sword, imagining a wave of light that would protect the palace and push the enemy back. The blade responded, growing brighter and extending a shield that enveloped the outer walls. The shadow beasts collided with it, unable to penetrate the energy barrier. The force threw many of them back, and for the first time in the battle, the tide seemed to turn. Commander Kale and the soldiers advanced, taking advantage of the pause. They fought with precision, flanking the beasts and cutting off their retreat. The palace defenses held, and the shadow creatures began to scatter, their coordination disrupted by Evan's strategic use of the sword. Voreth roared in anger, his figure looming larger as he gathered shadows around him. He lunged again, this time aiming for Lyra. Evan acted without hesitation. He dashed forward, positioning himself between the princess and the dark general. The sword pulsed violently, projecting a shield that wrapped around both of them. The impact sent Evan sliding across the floor, but he held his ground, refusing to let go. "Evan!" Lyra shouted, fear and trust mingling in her voice. "You can do this." He could feel the energy flowing through him, responding to his courage, his intent to protect, and his determination to survive. With a sharp motion, he extended the blade forward, releasing a wave of radiant light that struck Voreth squarely. The dark general roared as the light pushed him back, and the shadow beasts shrieked as they scattered into the distance. For a moment, silence fell over the battlefield. The guards and soldiers took cautious breaths, and Evan stood there, the sword glowing gently in his hands. He was exhausted, every muscle in his body trembling, but he had done it. He had faced Vorath, protected Lyra, and turned the tide of battle. Lyra ran to him, placing her hands on his shoulders. "You did it," she said, her eyes shining. "You are the chosen one. The sword chose well, but it is your courage and quick thinking that saved us today." It was a reflection of him, of his heart, mind, and spirit. Commander Kale approached, clapping a hand on Evan's shoulder. "You have done well, boy. You've proven that humans have a unique strength, adaptability, intelligence, and courage. You led when others hesitated, and that is what makes a true warrior. But remember, this is only the beginning. Vorath will return, and he will be stronger. You must continue to grow, or we will not survive the next encounter." As the palace recovered from the battle, Evan walked to the balcony once more. The stars above Eloria twinkled like distant diamonds, and the floating islands shimmered in the evening light. He felt the pulse of the Luminar blade in his hand, a steady reminder that he was no longer just a boy from Earth. He was a protector, a strategist, and a warrior in a world far beyond anything he had ever imagined. Evan thought about the future, the battles to come, the secrets the sword still held, and the journey he and Lyra would take to uncover them. He realized that fear would always be a part of him, but courage and determination could guide him through even the darkest moments. For the first time, he felt the true weight of being the chosen one. It was not just about wielding a sword or fighting monsters. It was about leading, thinking, and protecting those who could not protect themselves. It was about using every ounce of his human ingenuity and heart to face the impossible. Evan looked down at the glowing blade and whispered to himself, "I won't fail. I can do this. I will protect this world." Eloria's fate, and perhaps that of the universe, would soon hang in the balance. Evan tightened his grip on the sword, feeling the energy respond to his resolve. He was ready to face whatever came next. And in that moment, he understood that being a hero was not about being fearless. It was about facing fear, making the right choices, and protecting others no matter the cost. The Luminar blade had chosen him, and now he would prove that humanity's courage, creativity, and heart could shine brighter than any darkness. After the first major battle, Evan realized that surviving and defending the palace was only the beginning. The shadow beasts had been pushed back, but their leader, Vorath, remained a looming threat. Commander Kale and Princess Lyra agreed that the best way to prepare for his inevitable return was to seek out the ancient sites that the Luminar blade had revealed. These sites were said to contain knowledge and power that only the Chosen One could unlock. The next morning, the palace gates opened, and Evan, Lyra, and a small group of trusted guards stepped onto a floating platform that would take them across the skies of Eloria. The wind whipped against their faces, and the landscape stretched out beneath them in a panorama of glowing rivers, floating islands, and forests that shimmered with life. Evan's heart raced with excitement and apprehension. He had fought monsters before, but this journey promised something entirely new, a chance to discover the secrets of the sword and the planet itself. Lyra guided the group with a practiced hand, pointing out landmarks and warning of dangerous currents in the air. "We must reach the first site by nightfall," she said. "The Luminar blade will reveal the path, but it will not protect us from every danger. Stay alert." Reaching it would require precise navigation and courage, as the air currents were unpredictable and the cliffs unstable. The journey began with a series of jumps from platform to platform. Evan's muscles ached as he leapt, caught himself on ledges, and swung the sword to balance when a gust threatened to throw him off. The Luminar blade pulsed, giving him hints about where to land and which currents to follow. It was as if the sword itself wanted him to succeed, but it could not do the work for him. He had to act with focus and determination. At one point, a sudden windstorm nearly swept him off a floating bridge. Instinctively, he held the sword in front of him. A shield of radiant energy extended outward, holding the wind at bay and stabilizing him. He looked at the blade in awe. Every day he discovered more about its capabilities. It was more than a weapon. It was a living guide, responding to his thoughts, intentions, and courage. When they finally reached the first ancient site, Evan felt a strange sense of reverence. The site was a temple suspended on a floating rock, with stairs carved into crystal that spiraled upward. Glowing symbols lined the walls, and energy seemed to flow from the ground like liquid light. Lyra and the guards approached cautiously, sensing that the place was sacred and protected. Evan stepped forward, and the sword pulsed. It projected a faint beam of light that traced the symbols along the walls, highlighting a sequence that seemed to form a puzzle. "The sword is showing us something," Lyra said. "We must interpret it correctly to unlock the temple's secrets." Evan noticed patterns in the symbols, repeating shapes, flowing lines, and points where energy seemed to concentrate. He realized that the solution required not strength, but intelligence and patience. Slowly, he traced the sequences with the sword, following its guidance. The blade's glow grew brighter with each correct movement, and a hidden doorway opened, revealing a chamber filled with ancient knowledge. Inside, Evan found writings and holographic projections of past chosen ones, each wielding the luminar blade to protect Eloria. The sword hummed as he approached, reacting to his presence and focus. He realized that the energy within the temple was connected to him now, enhancing his understanding of the blade and revealing new abilities. He experimented, forming shields, directing energy bursts, and sensing disturbances in the surrounding environment. Each success filled him with confidence and excitement. Lyra watched quietly, impressed. "You are learning quickly, Evan." The sword responds not only to courage, but also to your understanding. The more you comprehend, the more powerful you become. Vorath had twisted them into instruments of destruction. By understanding the energy of the world and the sword, Evan could find ways to counter them beyond brute force. After several hours, they left the temple, carrying new knowledge and a deeper bond with the luminar blade. Their next destination lay even farther, over treacherous forests filled with creatures that moved like shadows themselves. The journey was difficult, testing their endurance, focus, and courage. Evan learned to trust not only the sword but also his instincts and his companions. One evening, as they rested on a floating platform beneath a sky full of auroras, Evan reflected on the journey so far. The sword had guided him through danger, taught him new abilities, and revealed truths about Eloria. Yet he knew the real challenge awaited, the confrontation with Vorath. The thought made his stomach tighten, but he also felt determination. He had grown stronger, smarter, and more confident. He would face whatever came next, armed not only with the sword but also with the knowledge and courage he had gained. The next day brought new challenges. As they crossed a dense forest of bioluminescent trees, the group encountered a pack of smaller shadow beasts. They were quick, clever, and aggressive, testing Evan's ability to act under pressure. He moved with strategy, using the sword to guide the enemies into traps and barriers that protected the group. He realized that human creativity, thinking beyond direct combat, gave him an advantage the shadow beasts could not anticipate. During the fight, the sword glowed brighter when Evan acted decisively to protect Lyra, forming a shield that absorbed multiple attacks at once. The creatures retreated, sensing the power emanating from the luminar blade. Lyra smiled, clearly relieved. "You are learning faster than I expected," she said. "Your heart and mind are as strong as the sword itself." It seemed to pull him toward certain points, guiding them toward energy sources, hidden paths, or places of safety. He realized that the luminar blade was not just a weapon, but a compass, a key, and a teacher. Its guidance required him to think, act, and trust both his instincts and his humanity. After several days, they reached the second ancient site, a cavern of flowing energy currents that shimmered like liquid light. The entrance was narrow, and the currents threatened to knock them off balance. Evan led the group carefully, holding the sword steady. Its glow intensified as he navigated the treacherous path, creating energy bridges and shields to protect his companions. Inside the cavern, Evan found more lessons. The temple revealed techniques for controlling energy, forming constructs, and sensing danger before it arrived. He discovered that the sword's power grew when he acted with purpose and clarity, and that it could amplify the abilities of those he protected. Each discovery was thrilling, and Evan felt a growing sense of mastery and connection to Eloria itself. Lyra looked at him with pride. "You are more than a warrior, Evan. You are a protector, a thinker, and a chosen one. The sword has chosen wisely, but it is your courage, heart, and intellect that make it respond so strongly." As they prepared to leave the cavern, a sudden tremor shook the ground. Energy surged around them, and Evan realized that their presence had triggered a protective mechanism. The sword pulsed violently, guiding him to position barriers and redirect energy flows. With careful movements, he stabilized the cavern, allowing everyone to exit safely. The experience reminded him that every step of the journey carried risk, but also opportunity. That night, As they camped beneath the floating lights of Eloria's auroras, Evan reflected on what he had learned. Courage and strength mattered, but so did intelligence, observation, and the willingness to act decisively. He understood that being the chosen one meant more than fighting. It meant guiding, protecting, and understanding the world around him. The luminar blade glowed softly beside him, almost as if it was listening to his thoughts. Evan felt a bond growing stronger each day, a connection that went beyond simple command. The sword was alive, and it responded not only to his actions but to his heart. He realized that this bond would be crucial in the battles to come, especially when facing Vorath and his dark army. Evan looked at Lyra, who was watching the stars, and felt a surge of determination. "We will succeed," he whispered to himself. "We will unlock the secrets, grow stronger, and protect this world. I will not fail." And as the stars of Eloria glimmered above them, Evan knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would test him, teach him, and ultimately define him as the protector of a world that had chosen him. Evan stood at the edge of the palace balcony, the luminar blade glowing steadily in his hand. The air was thick with tension. For days, scouts had reported Vorath's approach, and now the sky above Eloria was darkened by his massive army of shadow beasts. Their numbers seemed endless, moving as one with Vorath himself at the center, cloaked in darkness, his red eyes burning with malice. "Evan, are you ready?" Princess Lyra asked, standing beside him. Her golden eyes reflected worry but also trust. She had seen him grow from a boy unsure of his place into a warrior capable of leading a kingdom's defense. Evan took a deep breath, feeling the sword's energy pulse in sync with his heartbeat. "I am," he said, determination steady in his voice. "I know what I have to do. Today we fight not just for the palace or the people, but for the future of Eloria." Vorath was here, and his presence gave the beasts power. Evan stepped forward, raising the luminar blade. The sword pulsed brighter than ever before, responding to his courage, his focus, and his intent. He felt the energy of Eloria flowing through him, connecting him to the land, the palace, and the people he had sworn to protect. This was not just a fight of strength. It was a battle of mind, heart, and strategy. He began directing the soldiers with the sword. Simple gestures created energy barriers, redirected attacks, and pushed the shadow beasts into traps and defensive positions. The creatures lunged and swarmed, but Evan's combination of human creativity and the sword's power allowed them to survive and counterattack. Every movement he made was precise, every decision calculated. Vorath emerged from the shadows, his figure towering and menacing. His aura of darkness twisted the air around him, and Evan felt a chill that went beyond fear. The luminar blade reacted immediately, its glow intensifying as it aligned with Evan's intent. He understood that this confrontation would test everything he had learned: the training, the sword, his strategy, and his courage. The first clash was brutal. Vorath struck with immense speed, and Evan had to anticipate his moves. The sword flared, creating protective barriers and deflecting attacks. He realized quickly that brute force alone would not defeat this enemy. Vorath was too strong, too experienced, and too cunning. Intelligence, adaptability, and teamwork would be his greatest weapons. Evan called out orders to the soldiers, guiding them to strategic positions. Lyra coordinated support, activating energy cannons along the walls to target clusters of shadow beasts. Commander Kale moved alongside them, engaging enemies and shielding weaker soldiers. It was a coordinated effort, blending human creativity and alien technology with the sword's energy. During the fight, Evan discovered a new ability of the luminar blade. By focusing his intent, he could project constructs of light, temporary platforms, barriers, and even chains that could bind the shadow beasts. He experimented quickly, forming a wall to protect the soldiers while simultaneously lifting them above the battlefield on a floating platform. The sword responded instantly, amplifying his actions. Vorath watched carefully, recognizing the boy's ingenuity. "So the human is clever," he hissed, his voice echoing with dark energy. "But cleverness alone will not save this world." The battle raged for hours, with Evan moving across the battlefield like a conductor guiding an orchestra of light and strategy. Each action was deliberate, each decision calculated. He led soldiers, defended the palace, and used the luminar blade to counter Vorath's attacks. Slowly, he began to notice patterns in the Dark General's movements. Vorath relied on brute power and intimidation, but he underestimated human adaptability. Evan formulated a plan. He would lure Vorath into a position where the palace's energy could be used to amplify the sword's power. Using the Luminar blade, he created pathways of light, guiding the Dark General toward a narrow section of the floating platforms. The sword pulsed with approval, reacting to the clarity and purpose of Evan's intent. Vorath realized too late what was happening. He lunged at Evan, but the boy anticipated the move. He projected an energy barrier that deflected Vorath's attack, while simultaneously redirecting the palace's energy through the sword. Light surged from the blade, forming a radiant aura that expanded outward, cutting off Vorath's retreat and overwhelming the shadow beasts surrounding him. The Dark General roared in fury, but Evan did not falter. He pressed forward, using every skill he had learned. The sword responded perfectly to his focus, creating constructs to trap Vorath and push the shadow beasts back. He fought not with anger, but with determination and intent, protecting Lyra and the soldiers while striking strategically. Vorath tried to resist, summoning shadows and attempting to crush Evan with brute force. But the Luminar blade was more than a weapon. It was a reflection of Evan's courage, strategy, and heart. Every act of bravery, every decision to protect, amplified its power. Evan realized that the final blow would not come from strength alone, but from his ability to combine all he had learned. He reached the center of the battlefield, facing Vorath directly. The Dark General lashed out, a massive strike of shadow aimed to destroy. Evan countered, and the sword flared with blinding light, forming a barrier that not only blocked the attack but also reflected energy back toward Vorath. The impact sent the Dark General staggering, and for the first time he appeared unsure. Evan pressed the advantage. Using a combination of energy constructs and strategic movements, he surrounded Vorath, cutting off escape routes and isolating him from the Shadow Army. The sword glowed brighter than ever, fueled by Evan's intent, courage, and the desire to protect. The battlefield became a display of light against darkness, with every strike, barrier, and movement controlled with precision and purpose. Finally, Evan saw an opening. He focused all his intent into the Luminar blade, imagining a wave of energy that would protect Eloria while neutralizing Vorath's dark influence. The sword responded instantly, extending a radiant beam that engulfed the Dark General. Shadows screamed as they dissolved, and Vorath struggled against the overwhelming light. Evan held firm, not wavering for a moment. The sword pulsed violently, feeding on his determination and courage. Vorath let out a final roar before being engulfed completely, and then silence fell. The shadow beasts scattered, leaderless and disoriented, retreating into the darkness beyond the horizon. The battlefield was quiet, save for the soft hum of the Luminar blade. Soldiers cheered, running toward Evan and Lyra, their faces filled with relief and awe. Commander Kale approached, placing a hand on Evan's shoulder. "You have done it," he said. "You have proven that humans are not only brave, but clever, adaptable, and strong. The sword chose well, but it is your courage and heart that won the day." "You were amazing," she said softly. "You have saved Eloria, and you have shown that humanity's strength is extraordinary. We could not have done this without you." He realized that being the chosen one was not about glory or power. It was about protecting, leading, and thinking clearly under pressure. The Luminar blade glowed gently, as if acknowledging his growth and dedication. Evan understood that it was not just a tool of power, but a guide and a teacher. It had shown him the importance of courage, strategy, and heart. And through the battle, he had learned that humanity's true strength lay in creativity, adaptability, and the willingness to face fear for the sake of others. Vorath's defeat was significant, but Evan knew the responsibility was ongoing. The kingdom still needed protection, and the knowledge and power of the ancient sites had to be preserved. Yet for now, the immediate threat had been neutralized. Eloria was safe, and Evan had proven that even an ordinary boy from Earth could rise to greatness when courage and heart guided him. Lyra placed a hand on Evan's shoulder. "You have done more than I could have imagined. You have shown us what it means to be truly human, to face the impossible with courage, intelligence, and heart. Eloria owes you its freedom, and I owe you my life." The journey had been long, and he had grown stronger in ways he never imagined. Yet he knew that life was a series of challenges, and there would always be another test. But for now, he allowed himself a moment of peace. The Luminar blade pulsed softly in his hand, a reminder of everything he had learned and everything he had become. He was no longer just Evan Carter, the boy from Earth. He was a protector, a strategist, and the chosen one. As the kingdom celebrated, Evan stood with Lyra and Commander Kale, watching the shadows retreat and the first light of day illuminate Eloria. He realized that humanity's strength was not measured by brute force alone, but by courage, ingenuity, and heart. And in that moment, he knew that ordinary humans could achieve extraordinary things when they dared to rise to the challenge. Evan raised the sword high, letting its glow shine across the kingdom. It was a symbol of victory, hope, and the power of the human spirit. The people of Eloria had witnessed what a single human, guided by courage and purpose, could accomplish. And as the wind carried the light across the floating islands, Evan understood that this was only the beginning of his journey, not just as a warrior, but as a protector of worlds. The Luminar blade had chosen him, and he had proven worthy. And now, standing beneath the vast skies of Eloria, Evan Carter felt something he had never felt before: the unshakable confidence that humanity could face any darkness, solve any problem, and rise above any challenge. And in that moment, the stars above Eloria shone brighter, as if the universe itself was acknowledging the courage and heart of a human boy who had drawn a random sword and changed the fate of an entire world.